Okay, so I'm just going to go through the setup of your kitchen joinery drawings, we'll call them. It's not just for joinery, but that's the focus. So I've got some layers. I'm just clicking on layer properties to show you that I've got some layers that have come from Revit that are set up with the American layer naming convention, which for some reason just put Q. I don't know if you want to call it Q for joinery.
Yeah, I don't understand.
It's a bit odd, but apparently that's the American Institute of Architects layer naming standard. And so it's worth just quickly looking at this. Some of those layer names are okay. A wall, a door, A for architecture is a good thing to have in front of your layer names. S, I'm pretty sure, is for structural, so they're for engineers, which I don't think is really necessary, but that's what they do perhaps in America. And so, anyway, just be aware of that. There are different layer naming conventions, and I don't want to use the Q, so I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call it A joinery. And then I'll set the colour to something that'll look good on the projector. I'm not really worried about the colours following the layer standard there. And then the line weight, I'll make 0.18. And just while I'm at it, talking about layer standards, I know the American one can seem a bit strange, but it is actually the best one. The British one, have a look at it. Just look it up, and if you want to see something truly crazy, no one uses it. No one. I know British architects, I've spoken to them about it. It doesn't have logical names. If you don't look up what the name of the layer means, you won't know what's on it. Yeah. So the American one, even though it's not perfect, it's still one of the better ones. Okay, so then line type continuous, and you saw the line weight 0.18. So now I'll make sure I'm drawing on that layer, and then I'm going to just set out the layout of my kitchen. So I did have something that came in from Revit, but I didn't want to keep that. I want to redo the kitchen plan. So I'm going to start with it in the floor plan here, and I'm going to use offset just to bring out the walls, so offset from the walls 600, which is of course our standard bench depth. And then I'll select one of these lines and of course click to the side I want it to offset. So I'm going to do an L-shaped kitchen, that'll do to start, and then I'll fill it and join those lines together, and then change those two lines to my joinery layer. And notice that the line weight for the one on the left didn't change. Yeah. So you've got to keep an eye on that with things that come from Revit. And often you want to just set the line weight back to by layer. And so then I might change the layout of the unit as well, because the door here doesn't really make sense now if I want to have the kitchen in that area. So a good chance to look at this stretch command. If you're not using that, it's a really useful one. So with stretch there, I can simply go from one side to the other around my door and enter. Once I've selected. So the trick there is to go right to left so you get a crossing window. When you use stretch, you need to use a crossing window, not a left to right window. Then I'm going to click and then make sure ortho zoom, bring it down, and type in the distance I want that door to move, and I'll make it, let's say, 700. And okay, because these are hatches that have come from Revit, I've got to manually move those. Normally hatches will go with the lines, but again, just because they've come from Revit, we've got to manually use the grips to adjust those. So that's better. I can maybe even, sorry, I might take it further, because if the door opens fully, it's going to go back and hit the kitchen bench, so we'll just take it maybe further than that. It's not the greatest design, but it'll be functional at least. And so again, it's annoying we're going to move those hatches, but that's just how it is with Revit. What I'd recommend actually, sorry, I'm not thinking here, I'm going to delete those. So I don't know why I didn't think of it before, because those are new walls. So they shouldn't be hatch solid in any case. So it's a good chance just to tidy up those things, and again, get more familiar with the way things come in from Revit. which is good as a starting point, but again, not perfect. The door there also would need to have more detail showing, so we'll come back and put the door jambs and those things in. And then, okay, so looking at the bench here, maybe it would make sense just to take that all the way to the wall, even though if you took some time with it, you'd maybe come up with a better plan than I've got there. And then I'll just close it off and keep it simple for now. So that's the basic plan of my kitchen. And then, before I go too far in this drawing, I'm going to copy it off to the side and draw a more detailed version. So that's really the key idea here. You don't want to show all of the detail that we're going to show in the 1 to 20 plan in the 1 to 50 floor plan. So I'm going to select right to left to go over everything near the kitchen. Don't worry if I'm getting furniture. The furniture's all going to be hidden anyway. So I'll copy all of that to one side. And then I'll draw a rectangle around what I've copied. So I think we want to see that whole wall, so I'm going to try and go around that and bring it down, probably not too far. That'll do. Don't need the table and chair. And then I'm going to use trim and select the rectangle and then press enter. And then, I'm trying to remember, there was an option. No, I'll just do it the slow way. There is an option to just trim everything outside that rectangle, but I've forgotten what it is. It's not on the options there on the command line. And, sorry, my computer's just frozen, so we'll go and do that. You can see there, it's not trimming. So when that happens, it's again because of the way hatches come from Revit. So I'm just going to delete those. It's easier to put the hatches in again later. Okay, so then again back to trim. Now, after I select the rectangle and press enter, much easier to just quickly go around using crossing windows to select the things that need to be trimmed. Now, you can do joinery drawings without the surrounding walls, but if you need to locate the units against the wall, it doesn't hurt to have the walls there, but make sure that they're hatched or you've got some indication that they're not part of the joinery set. And in other words, the cabinet makers won't think that they need to build anything that's not necessary, and that's a common problem. When they're not sure what's part of the drawings that they should be using. And so normally, actually, if you're going to give a set of joinery drawings to the cabinet makers, you would then do another drawing after this. You copy just the units out of this plan and have a floor plan that just shows the cabinets, and even take the stoves and the other things off, and then you can give them assembly drawings to show where it goes against the walls, and then you show your splashbacks and everything there. But we're just doing 1 to 20 plan of the kitchen, so it's fine here to keep those walls. So that's a good starting point. I'll just get rid of those dimensions, and we'll do a little bit of setup for the detail. Now, when you're looking at the cabinets, you want to have an idea about the door sizes that you'll be thinking of. And so, I'm just going to see if we go to, have you been using any manufacturers that give you sizes that they prefer? Milo? Oh, no, but for kitchens. So I know Bloom do give you things like that, so they're a good one to look at. I just custom design everything, so I don't tend to use people like this, but if you want to look at those, then they might give you some ideas. Right, but the size does vary a lot, so you can even see here that these doors are a different size to the other one I just saw there. So, yeah, if you can keep it to round numbers, that's good for a starting point, but again, there are no fixed sizes that you need to stick with, but 450 is one that I've used, 500 I've done 600. I don't know, Colin, do you have any sizes of doors that you prefer for kitchens?
No,
Kitchens?
it's custom.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So let's say 450 as a starting point, and then, because 900 wide cabinets,
Well, just with stuff,
yeah, yeah.
also find that if you look at joinery information about the weight of cupboards for the overhead ones.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's a bit of a dictating factor.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, so I'll do them set back, so they won't be too big. But yeah, so maybe, well, if they're 450, that'll be okay. Yeah, especially if they're glazed or something. Yeah, yeah. So okay, so we've got that as a starting point, and then if you think about the way the cabinets would then need to be arranged, the corner cupboards often have issues as well. So you need to decide if you're going to use a corner cupboard. Or those corner drawers look interesting, actually. I don't know if they really work. Not sure. Yeah, it's always a problem. So, I mean, the daggy thing is to have those doors that that fold out. Yeah, with the weird hinge. Yeah, that always fails. But at least they work, and you can get into the kitchen corner. Then the other option is those rotating shelves. Which again, a bit daggy, but at least they work. And yeah, so yeah, L-shaped kitchens, they're actually quite functional, but yeah, the layout in that area is always a bit of a problem. So what are we going to do this time? Let's say, firstly I'll make a layer anyway to start setting this out. So I'll make another layer called a joinery dashed. So caps. And then I'm actually going to set hidden for the line type for this one. And it's just because the things I'm drawing are fairly small. And so then I'll draw a line and make sure it's on the dashed layer. So I might just make that my current layer now. And so you can see it's coming up with a dash, but the dash is too big. But that's because my scale down here is still on 1 to 50. So at this point it's a really good idea to have a scale for what we're going to print this, which is 1 to 20. And so then do you remember what to do to make the line type adjust to that, that new scale once I've chosen it? So yeah, you choose the scale and then RE to regen. And redraw it. Okay, so that's 600. Now I'm going to do it again a bit taggy and have a setback for my cupboards underneath the bench. And yeah, I know flush is really popular and flush can be good. So? Yeah, well, it's good. It's more functional to have it set back. And there are lots of good reasons for it. You don't get things dripping on the doors. You've got a bit more room for your hands and fingers. And yes, there are good reasons that it was set back, but also people like the more slick look that you get with the flush things, I think. So flush is popular, and I've done a few. Yeah, yeah. No, the cupboard's underneath. Yeah, so it is fairly common. Yeah. Oh no, the ones I've always set them back. Yeah, no, that's horrible when they're not set back. That's surely awful. Yeah. So, okay, so maybe we'll do it flush this time since they're pretty good. They look good. They're maybe not quite as functional, but yeah, they do the job. So, okay, so I've got that set out, and we'd have to work out then what we're going to do about the cupboard in the corner there. But that's 600. We know that because I've offset that for the benches, and then I can go and offset 900 to get an idea how big my cupboards would be. And this might all be adjusted, but that's just to give us a starting point. And again, then it's good at this point to have an idea of your construction type, whether you're going to have a constructed kitchen, in other words, one built on site, or essentially flat pack. And I think the flat pack thing's fine these days. So most people will not even notice the difference until they open the doors, and even then, usually not. So with flat pack, you have the carcass butting up against the next unit. So that means when I offset here, so I'll do it 19. So from here, I'm going to offset both sides. So that's the thickness, so it's a double up. If it was a constructed kitchen, you wouldn't need 2 blades, you just need one. So, yeah, yeah. And in fact you don't even need a full blade, sometimes I'll just have a thin piece, and then sometimes even a flat one on the front, depends on the style you're after, and then the doors are attached to that. But again, with flat pack, this is how it is. And so again, I'm just going to go and offset some more of these to get an idea of the set out of the cabinets. So this is the level of detail you want to show at 1 to 20, because you really want to try to give the cabinet makers an idea exactly what they've got to build. So then I'll offset again, and we'll just go with 19 and do it. Oh, now let's see actually. So it doesn't need to be waterproofed. The splashback will go on top of the cupboards, so I'll just do the cupboards right up against the wall. And actually I've done this exactly like this when I built them. I don't think if there's any need to do it with a backing, but I don't think you have to. So I'm going to offset 19 from the wall. And then of course change those lines to my joinery dashed layer, and again correcting lines that don't have the right line weight back to my layer. Okay, so that gives us a bit of an idea of the construction, and so then even if you had put in your stoves and sinks and ovens and other things previously, that way you can come back and maybe reposition them or just place them again to get a firmer idea how that might work with these cabinets. So you can also see, because we've got the window there, maybe it doesn't make sense to have certain units in that area. So here, maybe I'm going to decide to have a wall unit, or sorry, a full height unit for the oven. And it probably, of course, won't work where the window is, so it needs to be on this wall. But again, if you've got a set out for the cupboards, then that's much easier to work out. And I think it'd probably make sense to have it here, even though that could also be a good place for a servery. But I think that's all we can do in this unit. So, like a serving area. So I always like to have that. And it's a practical thing. And when I'm cooking, you know, you've got the area where you're doing your prep and everything. And then you cook, and then you've got to have a plate somewhere and put the food onto the plates, and that should be different to your prep area. Yeah. But you don't always have room for that. So, yeah. Okay, so then the lines here can just be changed to solid again. But actually, I'm going to make another layer. So this is joinery for projection. In other words, below the cut plane or behind the cut plane. So I'll make another layer for joinery when it's cut. People often get surprised how many layers you need just for the one thing to show it in different ways. So we've already got 3 layers for joinery just in the plan. So here I've just made that a heavier line weight, and so that it's easier for me to see on the screen, I'll also change the colour. Okay, so then I can change these lines to my joinery cut layer, and that's now reading as a unit that projects up higher than the bench. So at the moment that's just the blade, and then we have another piece that comes around here. No, you don't. So that's where you'd have to go and look at your catalogues and find out the size of your oven and then adjust it to suit. Yeah, I mean it probably could work, because you can have, so it's too wide, most ovens won't be that wide. But there are some commercial style ovens that would be close to that, I'd say. But you just got to look it up, the catalogues you can find. And then there are other units, so like you were saying, you know, so not the steamers these days, but you know, microwave and other things could be built in the same way. If you can get the chillers, that might be an interesting one to look at. Except this sort of unit wouldn't, they wouldn't have chillers. They wouldn't. Well, They wouldn't have the money. Oh yeah. Yep. Yep.
We've got a
Yep.
separate
Yeah. And look, Scott, I don't really. I know it seems like overconsumption, but if you're building something that's going to last, decades or even, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, possible. Yeah. No. Yeah. I know what that's like. I'm just replacing mine right now, and that's just going to be for a couple of years because then the whole kitchen's going to be demolished. But anyway, you got to do it. No, I'm not going to buy one that good. No, if it's going to be redone, no. Yeah, that's how it is sometimes. So, okay, so let's say this unit is going to be solid all the way down to the corner. I might need to change the width of it, so maybe I'll just get rid of these lines now and change this one, of course, to the same heavy cut layer. Offset it just like before, and that's no big deal. But what I really want to show you is then some ways of breaking a line, which might seem like a simple thing. In Revit, it's very simple because you've got the split element tool, but in AutoCAD, it was previously a bit of a problem. So they always had this break tool, and I'll show you that. So if you go to there, under the little modify panel, you've got break, and if you then choose a line, you can then pick a point for it to be broken. But the problem is that then it makes a gap between the point you've picked the line on and where you've made the break. So then you've got to stretch that one back. That's not a huge problem, and you can make it work. So that's now a separate line. But I'll show you the way they, I think, meant you to use it. If you wanted to break it at a point, you would choose the line, and then here you've got this first point option. Then you go and pick the point you want, and it breaks it, and you've got to pick the point again, and then it breaks it at that point. So it saves you a step. But what they've done is they realise, well, that's a bit of work. So next to that, you've got this one, break at point. Yeah. But it's actually not a separate command. What it is a little script that does all of those things for you that I just did manually. So it types F and it does all that. So what that means is if you press enter, it doesn't repeat that little routine, it repeats the break command, not break at point. So it's just a little thing that can catch people out, but otherwise it's pretty good. And so I'm just going to set this up to be my oven unit, so I'll make it have the offset 19 mil. Okay, so now I've got to break this one. So same thing, if you want to use break at point, just make sure you choose it from the menu each time. And so we choose our line and then say where it needs to break. Okay, and then if you want to at this stage, you can start to think about the way the unit would be built. And it's usually pretty logical. So, but it's not always as straightforward as you might think. So this piece at the back, so these are all pieces of flat board. How do you think that would be attached to the side pieces? So just maybe, I'll zoom in a little, it's hard for me to zoom in. I was going to the corner there. So do you think that it would go all the way to the end and then the side pieces would be in front of that? So in other words, like this? You're right. Normally that is how you would build these units. So, and trust me, because I know because I built them. That's right. So this is normal because it's easy to build. So the back supports everything, and then you screw in from the back to the sides. And that's easy to build. And that's the whole point with flat pack. But can we do it like that for this unit? What's going to happen if we do it? But this corner you'll see there's a problem. Here, it's obvious why there's a problem. You'll see the end.
Can't you just put another...
You can, but that's a lot of work. So to trim that, to put a piece over it, a covering piece, that's a lot of extra work. Much easier. You could do all of that, or you could just do this. Why not do that? So no, remember before this one came down to there?
But you would just do that on the inside.
Yeah, that's right. So it's only where it's exposed. Yeah, so the ones that are underneath the bench, we can use the back to support everything. But here, the side is what we're wanting to see. Yeah, but this one, we're going to see it above the bench top. So you've got to think about all those things. So that's the way to detail it. Just those little things, and the cabinet makers will follow your drawings. Unless they know, some of them will know better, and they'll realise if you make mistakes, sometimes they'll correct it for you, but not always. So you've got to be aware of that.
And then at the front,
Oh yeah, okay, so then you need to know what sort of doors you're using. But generally these days you'll have the doors with the hinges that essentially lift the door out as they open. So that means the doors can be flush with the cabinet, so it'd be like that. And that's a good basic setup for a unit like this that's got exposed sides.
So you would see that, Adam?
Well, you have to, because the door has to sit on the front. Yeah. So that's fine. And that's a good way of doing a cabinet like that. And then later when we work out the size of the oven and anything else, I mean, we could maybe put storage in here, or a nice thing actually that I really like to do, maybe if I had a slightly wider bench, so maybe I could bring that bench down. So when I've got room, I like to put in storage here with those doors that lift up, that fold up, so you can just pull things straight out, onto the bench. Yeah, so for units that, like for appliances and things that need to be on the bench top, but you don't want them sitting on the bench all the time, that's a good way of getting rid of them. So anyhow, that can be adjusted. So maybe I'll just quickly show you the stretch command again if you missed it. With stretch, right to left gives you a crossing, and you have to select that way. And I see a lot of people don't work that out, and they just avoid using the stretch command, when it's actually one of the most useful commands. So here, again, it's... Yeah, that's the problem. It keeps picking up the wall. So you can use Shift and then deselect. You can also type R to go to remove objects as well as another option, but Shift works. Okay, so then I can just bring the cupboard up, and again try and stick with round numbers, so I'll make it 300, and then if I measure that, you'll see it's going to be still a nice round number. Oh, sorry, not a round number. Okay, how do I get that? Well, I'll show you how to fix it. So that's 900, and let's say I want to stick with similar numbers, so I'm going to copy this line down. Let's say 1,000. Right, stretch it out. That's basically like a reference line, and then I can stretch my cabinet to snap to it. So then we can start to put in other units. You don't need to draw things like sinks usually. You can just go and get them from a block. So on the Home tab, you can go to Insert and More Options and Browse, and perhaps you all know about the AutoCAD library folder on the C drive. Yep, right. And so then in Blocks 2D, there is a kitchen and laundry folder that has sinks. They're all a bit daggy and old though, so let's get some better ones. This one's still fine. There are so many good sinks these days. Okay, so I'm going to look at another folder. So in AutoCAD 2D, it's not as organised in separate folders, but the names are pretty logical. This is Max's old library. They've been using AutoCAD for 20 years before switching over to Revit. So he's got a lot of stuff. But here we are. So these things chew is just in his wife's name together. That's all it means. So the chew doesn't mean anything. But then he's got all the kitchen things with K, and then here K2, KS, and so on. So we'll start with the here we go, the first K2, and then notice not all of them have thumbnails, but if I use the arrow keys just to flick through those, we do get the preview on the right. So, still pretty bad. So I think I'll live with this one. I really like the underbench sinks if you're doing a solid bench top. Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
We're going back to oven now.
Oh, right. Yeah, God, because... Yeah, well, if you get into the oven... yeah, well, ceramic's okay then. I just don't like the metal going over the benchtop. It's a bit ugly. Yeah.
Like, they were like, we were going to have oven now.
Yeah, if you've got a nice material, yeah.
So
It's,
oven now, and I was like, I don't want it to silver.
yeah. But the other one, it looks so much nicer. And if you're careful... I mean, I'll often go for wood. Yeah.
We had oven now.
Yeah. Yeah. And wood, I mean, if you're happy with wood bench tops, I know a lot of people don't like them, but I like wood, and then stainless. I don't mind stainless. But I know if stone's a bit of a problem, or the composite stuff. Yeah. So, anyhow, I'll go with this one for now, and so then notice this is a good chance to look a little bit at blocks, and I'll try and finish up in a minute, but I want to get to the set out at least, so of the views. So here I'll just quickly put in a sink, and then you can start to see how the layout of the cabinets can affect the way you need to work with your sink.
So is that the holes in the hole? Is that
No, so that's the drainage area. Yeah, that's it. So that's okay. Right, so then notice that the sink is heavy, the lines, and that's because the layer that I've placed it on has that line weight. Not all blocks will work that way, but I thought it's a good chance to show you the little trick with blocks, because we'll do more on blocks and maybe attributes after the holidays. But just to start you off with some of the things you should know about blocks. The reason, if you see objects pick up the line style of the layer they're on, it's generally because they're on layer 0. So that's a system layer that does certain things with a block. There is also the option of this by block setting for colours and line types and line weights. So it could be either of those things. And, so Max, who made this, he set it up for the way he works. And he's one of those people, the old way was to have red for light lines. That does work. But I don't need that. So I'm going to set those lines back to be by layer. And so, in fact, I'll just select all of it so you can see it all should now be on layer 0. It's all by layer. The line weight is by layer. Now, the line type, you can see it's set to continuous, so no matter what, it would stay continuous, but I think it doesn't hurt there to set that back to by layer as well. And then you really get a good idea how layer 0 works with blocks. It's a great thing. So here I'll save the changes. And now again, everything on that layer has the setting of the layer the block's on, because the line's on layer 0. And so then I'll get I'll just choose another layer. You can see it's going to get the settings from that layer, but it's probably a good idea at this point to make a new layer for plumbing fixtures. So well,
put like layers into piles. Like, see how we like keep the
yeah.
You know how we like Photoshop and that you can put them into like the really standard folder?
Oh, folders, yeah.
Not worth it.
That's a good point, actually. You can use filters, definitely, which do something very similar, and layer groups in when you use the Layer Manager. But I'm not sure if you're not using those things, if you can just do it natively in here. You can definitely do it with filters over here, but that's a lot more involved. And there's this thing called the Layer Manager, which will do all of that, but that's, again, it's a lot more involved. Otherwise, yeah, that'd be a good thing to have folders. I don't know why they don't do that. I know, but you get used to it, and you just end up, being used to working with lots of layers with AutoCAD. Yeah. So, yes, I've got my plumbing layer, and we'd call it, so it'd be plumbing fixture. That'll do. And so, again, colour's entirely up to you. Maybe something bluish for plumbing things. And again, a light-ish line weight, not the lightest, because it's a nice thing to have, say, the floor tiles or anything that's under this, even lighter line weight. Okay, so now I can put that onto my new layer, and it's going to get the properties, of course, from that layer. Okay, so then the stove. Now here, this is where I'd have to think about the layout a bit more, because fitting the stove in over there is going to be a bit of a stretch. It would fit, but it wouldn't be the best design I've ever done. And then we'll also get the fridge in. So maybe at this point you have to think, well, have I got to change the plan of the unit a little bit? And possibly you would, but I think we would get the fridge in down here. So maybe I'll stretch that back a bit more. It's a tight unit. I know you're all going to have to do fairly compact planning. And you know I'm not a fan of that. I love doing good kitchens. It's one of my favourite things ever. And you can't do good kitchens in a small space. But have a look at that Terence Conway thing. If you want to see some good compact kitchens, yeah, he's got some good examples from the 70s where they weren't into the, you know, new style caravans. They did proper sort of high tech things that were good. Yeah, so I'll just get a fridge. So here we are, K, and there are some fridges. So you can see he's got some okay, you know, ovens and things there. That might be a Smeg one even, I think. But he's got fridges for sure. So I'm just going to flip through these. Just to see. Yeah, oh yeah. I was working with Max in 1992. Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. Yeah. So, yeah. Just can't see where he's got his kitchen, his fridges though. I know he's got them. Oh, because I'm not up to K. There we are. So stoves. Oh, there's fridges. Okay, now these are 3D fridges. Right, so they'll work. But you need to think, well, is that really necessary to have a 3D fridge? Probably not use it to get a size, but what should you do to get the size of your fridges? Because again, they're things that have changed a lot in recent years. Yeah, that's right. The catalogues are freely available online. Not all manufacturers make them that easy to find, but if you can't find the manufacturer's one, just get the Harvey Norman catalogue, and they've got almost everything. So there you can see this is why they've changed, because the old fridges didn't fit in with the bench depth, and that's not great. Yeah. So anyhow, so I'll just leave room for it, and you would have to go and look it up and then just draw. It doesn't need to be a perfect drawing. If it's not a built-in fridge, just draw a rectangle. Because you're not designing the fridge, so we'll say fitting. What do you call it? A fixture. I was wondering with appliances. Yeah, so appliances get ordered separately, and the fridge often won't be part of the building contract anyway, so they're not really on the schedules most of the time, unless they're built in. If they're built in, they would be. So yeah, so we'll say it's a fitting, but I suppose in a way it is a fixture. So there's a bit of a debate about what's a fitting and what's a fixture. Believe it or not, there are articles about that. Anyhow, so let's just say it's a fitting. Oh no, fittings, that's more, no, that's a fixture. Yeah, so. Okay, so then the colour, then up to you, and so the line type for this should be hidden, because it's, again, mine's not going to be built in, well, not to start with anyway. And so let's say my new fridge, it's about 700 wide and 600 deep. So 600, minus 700. You do have to allow a bit of room at the back. So actually in real life it would be less than that. But again, these things you just look up. And don't waste time trying to work it out for yourself, because the information's all there. Okay, but that might do for now. Okay, so I've got a basic set out, and then we'd start projecting the elevations off. I'm not going to show you all of that, but start to think about how you could draw the things that you've hopefully sketched from what's on the board. And so there, I'll just do a very basic set out back on my maybe joinery layer for the line of the floor, and then offset 900 for the height of the bench. You want to know the height of overhead kitchen cabinets? Or does anyone know?
Is it on this style?
Yeah. Okay, so it's an easy one to remember, because if you think about the old building standard measurement, which was a foot in the old days, 304.5 mil. And in fact, a lot of building materials are still based on that, but most of it has gone over to metric, and so the closest to that is 300 mil. And so lots of building materials do divide up into increments of 300. So bricks, it's 600, but 7 courses fit into 600. That's how you work out the height of your bricks. And so it's the same with kitchen units, joinery units, lots of things will divide up in increments of 300, but don't take it as a golden rule. There's always going to be adjustments for different things as well. So that makes it easier to remember these heights. So we've got 900 for the bench top, and then if you come up another 600, that's the height your cabinet should be above that. And so that gives you 1500. And then again, so it's another 600 high for the units themselves. Okay, that takes you to 2100. And that's pretty standard, even though some people who aren't as tall like them to be a bit lower, but you shouldn't do that. Yeah. So, I mean, it's the shelf, the high shelf is still going to be half of that, so it'll be 1800, which is, you know, just doable. So, yeah, so that's a good starting point, and then you project your lines off. I won't show you all of that, but again, just to make a start on it, you project off and start to draw in the lines for everything you can see in the plan. And then, how are we going for time? We're going to run out, but just do the wall. Now, you can project off in different directions. So if you want to project off left and right and down, as well as up, that's an option if you're comfortable rotating the view using the little curved arrows there. You can do that, but just remember, if you're going to work that way, it probably is the most efficient way with a set of joinery drawings, but if you're going to work that way, then you need to rotate the view in the viewport later. But as long as you're comfortable with that, and then also remember that copied viewports don't work as well, and I'll show you why in a second, then you'll be okay. So that's enough for me to start setting up most of the views, but in fact what I might do is just start to set up one of the other elevations. Now, you can project with polylines and rectangles to have these lines automatically project across with the same heights. But I think it's probably just as easy to copy these things and then rotate them. It's just for the heights. And then I neaten it up just so that things don't get in the way. And right, so that way, this is only going to be a section anyway on that side. So maybe I'll flip around to the other side. Okay, and then mirror those, because that's going to be the more useful elevation, of course. And so if I mirror these using the midplane of this line, those then turn up in the right spot. And I could then even bring these lines across and use them as the starting point from our next elevation. And it's a good chance there to show you the object tracking in AutoCAD, so you can easily line things up. So that's going to give me a good point, and I can even then stretch this line back across, again using object snap tracking to line that up. And I'll just stretch one more time, just to tidy these lines up. Okay, so that sort of makes sense, the way that you can set up those elevations radiating around your plan. And so I'm just going to draw one more line before I move on to the sheets. or the layouts, just so we can see where this full height unit is. Don't forget about kickboards, even for full height units. You usually should have them, particularly if you're going to have doors in that unit. Why do you think you want a kickboard if that's a full height unit? It's a real problem. I've seen people trying to be really trendy and have a really sleek look where the doors go all the way to the floor. Not good. Why do you think it's a problem? Take your toes off. It's a real problem. It's a disaster. No professional would ever do it, but I see lots of amateurs just messing around and trying things, and I've seen it, where they've taken the doors, not for the underbench cabinets, but for these full height units, just had doors go all the way to the floor. It's shocking. And fridges as well, when the fridges have doors that are too low. I think it's really dangerous. Maybe. Because again, what if your feet I've seen them. Yeah, I've seen fridges where the door's about this far off the floor. Yeah. 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 Not very good fridges, but yeah, I've seen them. Yeah. Okay, so so it's good to think about those things. And so that's enough then for me to go and just do a quick setup for the sheets, just to give you an idea how it's all going to turn out on the layout. So, rotating the view back to the way I had it to start with, it helps. So I don't get any surprises when I come back to the model tab. And so I've already made a new sheet, but I'm just going to go to a sheet that I'd made earlier. Yeah, this one will do. And instead of using a new sheet, I'll copy that sheet by right-clicking and going to Move or Copy, tick Create a Copy, and choose the one I want it to go before. There's my new layout. And I'll delete any layouts that are there. I might leave the tag for now. But again, we'll spend time after the holidays looking at how to do tags as blocks that you can make and maybe even put attributes. I'll give you some different options there. And but the main thing here you need to be comfortable with is making viewports. So on the Layout tab, now you've got NV set up if you want to make a lot of viewports automatically, but it can cause a few little problems. But we'll come back to that as well. So try NV setup, you'll see what it does. It does some good things. But here, all I'm going to do is use the rectangular option to make a viewport and make them one at a time. Okay, so going to the layer that I made earlier for viewports called GANO N-Plot. I might even have one called Viewport sometimes, but no, that'll do. So that's a non-printing layer. Then back to the Layout tab, I'll make a rectangular viewport just by clicking 2 points. And then double click to make the viewport active and change the scale to 1 to 20. It's zoomed right in, so I can pan then to reposition the view. But that can be a bit of a problem if you're not sure where things are, so don't be afraid to zoom to find things and reposition them, but just make sure you realise that you need to then set the scale again if you've zoomed. So then I can still pan to position it a bit more, so that might be good. Double click to go back to the layout and then use the viewport edges to change the cropping of that view so that I can see everything I want. Okay, so I've got a part plan of the kitchen, and that's exactly what I'm after. Okay, so I might show you a couple of little pitfalls that you can come across when you're doing this with AutoCAD. If I copy that viewport, and that's what a lot of people would try to do, I've just made it active by double clicking on it, and notice the first one has the Viewcube, the second one doesn't. That's a bit of a bug in the program. Yeah. And then remember I was saying, so that NV setup, sometimes that happens as well. So that's a bit of a problem. Right, so it's better to make a new viewport the same way you made the first one. Yeah, just because of that bug. if you know there are other ways of rotating things in a view, and if you know about those other options, then it's fine to do those things. But if you don't know those options and you want the view cube, that's what you have to do. So now I can zoom in and position this, but I don't want that elevation. I want that below my plane, right? Because it would project down. So that would make sense to have it underneath. So instead I want this elevation, or in fact, sorry, this one. So I'm going to rotate the view. Just going to yeah. So it's because, oh sorry, gone the wrong way. So it's because, again, that when they're looking at these drawings, they can just project down and have this line up with the other elevation underneath. So this one won't be lined up with anything, except when we do sections, which they will line up with, but yeah, that's right, the internal elevation, yeah. So again, I can set the scale now, and that's good enough, and we've got room then for a section as well. So that's good, and then, okay, so the viewport doesn't need to be that big, but we can adjust that later. So I'll now make another viewport underneath. You might even be thinking, I'm not going to fit all of this, but I'm pretty sure I will. That tag I'll need to come back to and work out something there, so I'll delete that for now. You can always get it from the other page. And then go and rotate my view, and these arrows are just the opposite of what I think, so I'll just have to think about that. Yeah, so there we are, so now I've got one I want to see. Oh, sorry, going too far, I didn't need to rotate that one. So here, that was actually at the right angle already. And now we can just set this to 1 to 20 and reposition the view. And then, hopefully I've got enough room if I bring it down to just fit it there. But I've got room to bring these up as well, and we can juggle things around a bit to make it fit a bit more nicely, and then we've hopefully got room for the labels as well. So remember, the viewport borders don't need to print. But then finally, to get this right, have I done? Oh, you haven't got the walls there. So the lines here, that's going to be the wall. Now, you don't have to show it heavy, but it doesn't hurt, just for a bit of clarity. So I've changed my wall layer, but again, have to check the line weight there. What's going on there? Ah, okay, so they've got theirs at 0.5. This is again from Revit, so I'm going to go and change my wall setting to match that. So my walls look the same. Just a few little workarounds like that. Things come from Revit. And so, then what you might be thinking is, how do I make that line up exactly? So, to do that, I'm going to draw a line from my plan on the page. Right, and then you select the viewport and move it by snapping to the line in the viewport, and then you can line it up with this temporary line, and then I can delete that, and that's going to line up exactly. Now, why isn't it? Let me see. So this line, that's not right. That's why. So I've just gone back to the layout just to finish off drawing those walls. Okay, so, and I'll tidy the rest up later, but that's fine for now. Okay, so now back onto my layout. What's going on? There must be a problem with the scale. No, that's right. Something going on there. Things should be lining up now. Oh, it's because this line is wrong. So that line, sorry, that's not meant to be on the wall layer. That's on the joinery layer. Yeah, it will be cut eventually, so I'll just bring that down. Yeah, that's my mistake. So there we are. Okay. So now I'll have to do that again. So I'll just go back to our page, and this probably will show it to you better. So I'm going to draw a line now from this wall coming down, and then again move the whole viewport across, snapping to those lines. So now it does line up perfectly, and then I can extend the viewport across, and there we are. So that's a good setup, because that way people can check the elevation against the plan and vice versa. So that's it. And yes, that should give you a good setup for all of your joinery drawings. You can use exactly the same approach for your bathroom elevations as well. And so, yeah, so if I was setting this out, I would do it like that. Like I was saying, go clockwise if you can, and then you can have sections. You probably need 2 sections for these joinery units, and they could go down here or to the right of this one. You've got room, and you're going to have notes and things, so they'll take up the rest of the page. But that should do it.